Alright guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk about a very, very bad day for Star Wars, for Disney Star Wars. A lot of bad news today. Two big stories broke over the last 24 hours. The big one being that Benioff and Weiss, the Game of Thrones guys, are out. They're not working on the new trilogy. Whatever this new trilogy is going to be, they are out. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how legendary Star Wars screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan, writer of The Empire Strikes Back, and I think co-writer on Force Awakens, said Disney dropped the ball. Disney dropped the ball. They blew it. They blew it. His words. They blew it with Solo, a Star Wars story. Again, both of these stories occurring within the last 24 hours. You've got a well-regarded Star Wars writer and two guys that were supposed to save Star Wars going forward. All of this is just kind of imploding. So before we get into the video, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. We're at almost 70,000 subs, hoping for 100,000 soon. Thank you so much for that. So let's talk about Lawrence Kasdan first. Lawrence Kasdan, of course, wrote The Empire Strikes Back. He's well regarded amongst Star Wars fans. He's a big fan of Han Solo. He did work somewhat on Solo, a Star Wars story with his son. And he said Disney blew it. They blew it. This is great. This is, you know, to have such a well-regarded Star Wars figure speak out like this against Disney's handling of Star Wars is you know, surprising, but not surprising really. So screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan has a long history with the Star Wars franchise, and it started with The Empire Strikes Back. The last Star Wars film he worked on was Solo, a Star Wars story, and that will most likely be the last film in the franchise that he'll ever work on. After telling Kathleen Kennedy he wasn't interested in jumping back on board Star Wars again, she managed to wrangle him in with The Force Awakens while speaking at the Austin Film Festival. The writer did say that working on The Force Awakens was a very good experience, and he agreed to come back for Solo if his son Jonathan could be involved as well. Droid writes. But things didn't turn out the way he hoped. Kasdan went on to bluntly say, then the studio blew it, but that's not unusual. So he came right out and placed the blame on Disney and Lucasfilm for what happened with Solo. While the film ended up being great, the movie didn't make the kind of money Disney hoped it would be. The film wasn't a failure like most people think. It wasn't a failure. It just didn't make as much as the studio wanted. It did not make nearly as much as the studio wanted. How can it not be considered a failure when they had massive reshoots? This movie wound up costing probably $300 million plus. It made less than $400 million worldwide, and its failure, and I'm going to call it failure, its failure led to the cancellation of all the spin-off movies that they were planning to do. Sounds like a failure to me. Now, personally, I like Solo more than I thought I would. I actually thought it felt sufficiently Star Warsy. It just had a lot of things that felt like they were leftovers, maybe from the Lego movie guys. Personal opinion, but there was some of it, you know, some of it felt very, very much like old school Star Wars. I think Ron Howard did the best job he could do. But yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess. The whole situation, the marketing, everything, was a cluster. So whatever happened with Solo made him not want to work on any more films with Disney, with Lucasfilm. He's more interested in directing, but Lucasfilm hoped he would stay involved and even sent messengers to his house to try and hand deliver a script to him. Kasdan said, I never saw this poor messenger they sent. I said, I can't take it. I didn't want to sit down and read someone else's Star Wars movie. I'm just not interested in Star Wars. Disney has ruined Star Wars for probably the best screenwriter Star Wars has ever had. Just let that sink in for a minute. He later added, don't think for a second, I don't know how lucky I am that they're sending a Star Wars script to my door and I can say no, I won't accept it. You have to be in a very privileged situation to do that, and I didn't ever take that for granted. This is coming from Geek Tyrant. The writer says they personally think that Solo is one of the best films that were made in this new series of Star Wars movies. I would agree, but that's not really saying a whole lot, but I would agree. Solo and Rogue One were probably the two best. I would have loved to see the story continue, but at this point, I don't know what will happen. Hopefully they continue the story as a Disney Plus series. I don't know. Who knows? It's kind of sad that Kasdan is ready to leave Star Wars behind him. A lot of people are. A lot of people are. This is the thing. This is what Disney doesn't understand. I mean, it's not just the people involved with I mean, you've got George Lucas being like, screw this. You know, George Lucas called Disney white slavers. George Lucas said that the movies that are being made now, the sequel trilogy, is not based on his vision for Star Wars, for his vision for an ending for Star Wars, another ending for Star Wars 7, 8, 9. He had something totally different. Bob Iger even admitted that George Lucas felt betrayed. So George Lucas felt betrayed. Lawrence Kasdan said they blew it. Okay, these two gentlemen worked on The Empire Strikes Back. Just let that sink in. Mark Hamill has said some things that you have to kind of read between the lines, but Mark Hamill is not terribly happy with where Star Wars is right now, but I think because he's currently working on Star Wars, he can't say much. I think after The Rise of Skywalker comes out, people are going to let things slip. I think there are a lot of actors working on that franchise right now that are not terribly happy with how their characters have been treated. John Boyega has teased that he's not real happy about Star Wars, but obviously he's got to go on a press tour and all of that. He can't say anything yet. Wait a couple of years. You're going to see these actors doing the convention circuit or doing film festivals like Lawrence Kasdan, and they're going to be like, yeah, let me tell you what I really think. Now that I'm out of contract, now that my NDA has lapsed, let me tell you what I really think. And we're going to see a lot of that in the coming years. So that is regarding Lawrence Kasdan. He's had it. They blew it. This is a huge setback for Lucasfilm. Benioff and Weiss left. Now, supposedly they left on their own. I guess they did have a big fat Netflix deal. And we said before, when they signed with Netflix, Netflix is a direct competitor to Disney+. Disney's not going to be happy about that. They're not going to be happy about that. But it might have more to do with the fandom not being happy with Game of Thrones. And the last thing Disney needs at this point is to bring in these guys who are being blamed for dropping the ball at the end of Game of Thrones, bring them in to work on Star Wars. So I'm sure there's a lot of things going on here. Really, I think they're just focused on what they're going to do over at Netflix, which begs the question, who's in charge of Star Wars? Who is in charge of this next trilogy that we've heard nothing about? Will there be another trilogy? You know, will it come anytime soon? Are they going to put Rian Johnson in charge? You know, that scares me. Are they going to put Rian Johnson? Are they going to give Benioff and Weiss's trilogy to Rian Johnson, the most polarizing figure in Star Wars currently? I don't know. That would be a really stupid business move. It really would, because if you're trying to win the fans back, putting Rian Johnson in charge of another Star Wars trilogy is not the way to do it. All right, this is coming from Deadline. Star Wars setback. Game of Thrones duo David Benioff and D.B. Weiss exit trilogy exclusive. Benioff and Weiss, the duo who in 2011 launched the singular screen sensation known as Game of Thrones, have walked away from their much publicized deal with Disney's Lucasfilm to launch a feature film trilogy in 2022. Benioff and Weiss were supposed to usher in the post-Skywalker era of the Star Wars brand with a 2022 New Start story that would stake out a new frontier for the era-defining cinema brand created by George Lucas, who felt betrayed by Bob Iger. And Bob Iger even admits that. George Lucas, who felt betrayed, Lucasfilm not using his outlines for 7, 8, and 9. Let's just remember that. Let's just remember that in all of this. So as far as I'm concerned, most of everything Disney has done is apocrypha. So the Emmy-winning pair cited their historic deal with Netflix. They said their enthusiasm for Star Wars remains boundless, but regrettably, their schedule is full up. We love Star Wars, they said in a statement. When George Lucas built it, he built us too. Getting to talk about Star Wars with him and the current Star Wars team was the thrill of a lifetime, and we will always be indebted to the saga that changed everything. That 2022 release date made the Benioff-Weiss startup the next in-line Star Wars installment, following this December's Rise of Skywalker, the final chapter of the Skywalker family chronicles. They've been captivating moviegoers since 1977. Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy has plenty of other Star Wars projects in the hopper. The Rise of Skywalker, The Mandalorian, Ian McGregor, maybe something with Rian Johnson, Kevin Feige. Is Kevin Feige going to be in charge of the next Star Wars trilogy, starring Brie Larson? Oh my God. Kennedy didn't shut any doors in her send-off statement on Monday. David Benioff and Dan Weiss are incredible storytellers We hope to include them in the journey forward when they're able to step away from their busy schedule to focus on Star Wars. It's a big fizzle ending for the Firecracker Fuse headline from February 2018 when the deal was announced, but the duo's deal arguably lost some luster during the much maligned final season of Game of Thrones earlier this year, as many fans questioned whether the Game of Thrones creators had the storytelling chops to handle a Jedi saga. Apparently they just give it to anybody. You know, Rian Johnson had, what, like 2 or 3 credits doing indie films, and they said, here you go. Here you go. Here's the keys to Star Wars. You go do whatever you want, Ryan. You go do whatever you want. And look what happened. In the end, however, it appears the tandem's deficiency was in time, not talent. In August, Deadline broke the news the Game of Thrones duo had signed a 9-figure deal with Netflix. Yeah, as soon as they signed that deal, we're like, it's over. They're not gonna do Star Wars. They're not gonna have time, and Disney's not gonna like it. They're working for Netflix. They're a direct competitor. There are only so many hours in the day, and we felt we could not do justice to both Star Wars and our Netflix projects. So they'll go do something Star Warsy for Netflix. You watch. They'll go do something Star Warsy for Netflix. Netflix will have them create a science fiction or science fantasy show that ropes in both Game of Thrones and Star Wars fans, and they'll give them a ton of money to do it. And then it's going to make like The Mandalorian look sad. That probably is what they're thinking. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I don't know. But very interesting. So it looks like, you know, all of Lucasfilm's plans for Disney Star Wars are sort of burning. Star Wars is burning. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Like, you know, George Lucas doesn't like Disney Star Wars. Lawrence Kasdan, writer of The Empire Strikes Back, doesn't like Disney Star Wars. People aren't excited about The Rise of Skywalker, not like Disney wants them to be. The merchandise isn't selling. Galaxy's Edge isn't bringing them in like they thought it was going to. You know, I don't know what else it's going to take. What else is going to take to smack some of these, you know, Disney Star Wars apologists upside the head and be like, look, it's broken. This is broken. It's not doing that well. Now, will The Rise of Skywalker make bank? Yeah, I think it's going to make some money. I do. I don't think it's going to shatter records, though. I'm not completely convinced all those ticket sales are 100% legit, because we saw the same thing with Solo. We saw the same thing with Captain Marvel. You know, I don't know. But it's also competing against Jumanji 2, and Jumanji was, or I guess it would be 3, was a huge, huge hit. And just the general public just seems to be running out of give a shit for Star Wars. Go to any Walmart and you're going to see all kinds of Force Friday stuff just collecting dust on the shelf. You know, collecting dust. And this is not good. So we'll see how The Mandalorian is anyway. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.